stand side by side with nobody till I bleed with them first.
What did we just see? You probably think this world is a dream come true.
When I step into this ring, yeah, bro, I am addicted.
Don't sleep on Luca!
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42.
If you fight for your dreams will fight for you.
Alright, let's just get this out the way now. This is just my opinion. Let me say that again. This is just my opinion. Why am I pointing this out in the beginning? Well, there's a certain portion of the Blackpink fan base that is very comparable to a certain Western artist fan base that will literally leak a photo of your mom's house simply for disagreeing with them or not liking said artist's latest release. All jokes aside though, Blackpink, one of the biggest groups of their genre, and within this last year, we've seen all of their members pretty much branch off and kind of take their music in different directions. But what do I think about each of those releases in detail, and how would I rank them? So let's go in order of the releases, and we'll go talk about the rankings at the very end. So going in order, the first member that gave us their solo release was Rosie. Rosie had a lot of people excited for her solo release, especially because of the breakout hit APT with Bruno Mars. Quite frankly, it set massive expectations, and it took a lot of people by surprise to the point where it caused a lot of people to kind of come out and label her as the most artistic member. Now, some of it might have come as kind of a, not necessarily a backhanded compliment, but there were some people who were using this most artistic member, the member who cares about music more, kind of like as a way to shade the other members of Blackpink. But there was others who truly looked at it and were like, they felt that she was putting a lot of artistic effort, and the best sort of explanation for it, to showcase it in a positive light, is looking at the APT music video. The entire video is just Rosie and Bruno having a blast in a simple pink room with instruments, equipment, and various filters and editing styles kind of sprinkled in the video. It's a very simple video. You don't really think much of it, but yet it got 1.3 billion views. Rosie understood. She didn't need an elaborate video to portray the vibes and energy of the song. She kind of knew that energy was enough to carry it on its own, and then you contrast that with other music videos she's done, and it just kind of shows that she gets it. She gets what each song sort of needs. She gets what people are looking for out of each thing. And to me, her entire rollout was pretty great, and it was kind of clear she had a theme, she has a direction she wants to roll with. So let's roll with it, and that led us to Rosie. 12 tracks, around 36 minutes long. And on first listen, the first couple of listens, it kind of seemed very simple. The theme was kind of simple. It kind of mainly seemed, mostly about heartbreak, mostly about relationships. You're like, oh, nothing too crazy, nothing too out there. But then you started looking into it. You started looking into her interviews, and you start to see. You start to see this record in a brand new light, the way I ended up seeing it in a brand new light thanks to this video. The theme, again, is very simple. Vulnerability. And that's a theme that we are going to see once again from another Blackpink member, is vulnerability. But again, pretty simple theme, nothing special, right? But again, it's all about the way you view it. Because for me, on first listens, like I said, it was pretty easy to just look at it and look at this record and pretty simply view it from the lens of heartbreak and relationship, But it was Rosie's post about the album that revealed so much more. Because you read into that post, and you read into it, and you read into her story, and you see she started working on this record after Blackpink's last world tour. And she says it herself. To her, she was kind of trying to piece together what her career would look like. And honestly, I think saying something like that is quite vulnerable, considering where she's coming from. it was kind of easy to imagine where the other members would go post Blackpink, you know, but at least myself, and I even asked one of my friends to like confirm if he also felt the same way, since he's more in tune with the K-pop world. You know, I'm just here for the music. I don't look into what social media is saying. I don't look into what fandoms are saying, but you know, this is how I felt from, you know, the outside looking in. And this is how one of my friends, who's like I said, more in tune, he said he understood what I was saying and said that he had similar thoughts too. It kind of felt like people disrespected Rosie. While I was personally excited for her solo stuff, it really felt like maybe a lot of people were writing her off. And so because of that, it kind of seems like it's easy to imagine why she was left questioning what her next steps in her career would be. And we see that doubt bloom in Rosie's opening track, Number One Girl, which was another lead single. On the surface level, like I said, you could view this and it's just Rosie desiring to be the girl who gets the most attention from their crush. She wants to be their point of focus and attention. And like I said, truth be told, that's how I viewed a lot of this record on first listen. But then when you get the context and you start looking at Rosie's, you know, interviews and all that, like I said, you start seeing this different meaning that lies underneath. Perhaps that title of Number One Girl is about her place in the K-pop world. Because Rosie herself would say when talking about this song, I realized how vulnerable and addicted I was to this online world and that craving for a feeling like I wanted to be loved and understood. I hated that about myself. I decided to write a song that's so disgustingly vulnerable and honest that people learn that I am a person that goes through these emotions, and I hated that about myself. If anything, it's something I want to cover up. Even in interviews, I'm like, nothing really phases me, you know, but it does. Every word, every comment, it crushes me. She knows that expressing emotions like this can easily lead to her words being twisted. People will run with narratives. They'll depict her as jealous and envious, even of her own, you know, bandmates. But in reality, she just kind of wants her talents to be appreciated and uplifted. That's what she's searching for, is that validation for her abilities, for her career so far. And at that same time, she also recognizes it's not necessarily healthy to constantly chase after validation. That's likely, you know, especially never to be fulfilled. There's going to be people out there who are never going to give you that validation. But also, we also see that she says, on the contrary, she would also seek validation from the negative side of things. She would read comments that were about her biggest flaws and, you know, read comments with baseless critiques, and she would view them as validation for her biggest insecurities. The song itself, such a change of pace from APT, and it was a very interesting choice for an album opener. You know, it's much slower with a more powerful ballad-like energy in it, but it's still effective. Especially, it sets the dramatic nature of the record and truly expresses that vulnerability that Rosie wants to express to her fans. You know, she wants them to see more about her, you know. And like I said, definitely super vulnerable, because it's like, again, it's kind of tough to be open about those feelings without being depicted as jealous or envious, you know, and having people run with these narratives, especially because Blackpink's entire career has had to deal with people running narratives against them. So it's a difficult choice, but, you know, that's what she wanted out of this record, was to be vulnerable and open. 3 a.m. is a song that I'm not fully sold on, but I do think it is a great vocal performance from Rosie. Feels very raw and stripped back, letting a lot of her natural vocals shine through. 2 years sees Rosie talking about how despite 2 years passing, she still kind of feels stuck on her past lover. They continue to live on in her mind, and she doesn't really understand why she can't move forward. Toxic Till the End is easily one of my favorite tracks from the record. Here, Rosie kind of just understands that she made the choice to start things off slower, so she adds a track like this to add a bit of pace, you know, a change of pace to the record. And the song truly showcases Rosie's toxic side, as she is seen full of anger at her ex, exclaiming things how she'll never forgive them for wasting her prettiest years. And yet in the chorus, she says that whenever she would tell him that she was never coming back, she actually couldn't wait to see said ex again. Real confusing there, Rosie. Like, I mean, it makes the title make sense, but man, real confusing sort of mindset there, not gonna lie. But I do like the change in musical style, especially. And similarly, I like the change in musical style that is presented on Drinks or Coffee. But I don't have a lot to say about that record, but it is a very interesting record. As I stated at the beginning, APT, biggest song from the record. Rosie and Bruno, just infectious on this track. I really, really enjoyed the pairing. The chorus, a bit odd at times, can take a while to grow on some people, but there's no doubt about the rest of this track because Rosie and Bruno, just really great. Energetic verses, funky production. The pre-choruses where they sing together is a perfect blend of their vocals. One can only wish for the other half of Silk Sonic to be included in a future collab, because I mean, could you just imagine a performance where Anderson .Paak is on the drums and adding vocals in as well? Would be amazing. Continuing on though, Rosie embraces that pop punk sound for the bridge, and it's amazing. It's amazing. The song reaches a beautiful crescendo at the end, creating an overall energetic boost on a pretty emotional record. And considering it is named after a Korean drinking game, one could also look at it as Rosie going out with friends to relieve herself of the heartbreak, basking in the energy of her peers in order to sort of provide herself a break from all the stress, you know. So I thought, even though some might look at it out of place, it does kind of fit the theme of the record still. But that sort of high is only temporary, as she still has to come face to face with her problems, and we see that on Game Boy where she confronts her heartbreak head on. The main issue she wants to tackle is, why did it take 2 years to move on from this guy? Well, it's simple. He played her like a damn fiddle is how she puts it on this track. The guy was manipulative. He knew how to mess with her mind. This kind, sincere act was all a facade he would use to manipulate her, and now 2 years later, she's finally realizing it. And she's able to put it all behind her as she realizes he was never going to change and was always meant to break her heart. And that's what leads us into our next two songs, Stay a Little Longer and Not the Same. These songs kind of see Rosie battling her desire for that facade. She wants the person that he appeared to be. The facade was kind of everything she wanted, and that's what kind of makes it so hard to say goodbye. She felt like she was so close to getting what she wanted, only for it to all be a lie in the very end. And so she kind of asked herself, how am I supposed to move forward and be able to trust that the next person is being truthful after such an event, you know? And by the end of the record, we do kind of get to see how far Rosie has come after this intense journey. You know, she has learned to accept herself. She has learned to move forward, and move forward is what she's going to do. Life will come with its aches and pains, but she wants to be free from all that stress and anxiety. She wants less worrying about her insecurities and past mistakes, and wants more optimism about what the future holds for her. And I too wish to feel the same way, Rosie. Like, I think everyone would love to move past a lot of that stuff and just have more optimism. Overall, great album. And like I said, I come out of this review loving it even more after doing further analysis and gaining that sort of extra lens of like viewing it from her perspective as a musician embarking on the new chapter that is a solo career. Okay, so this next one is a bit difficult for me to judge in comparison to the others, because while the others have given us full-length releases, all we have from Jisoo is an EP. An EP that I will admittedly say I had no clue that it released until it popped up in my recommendations. I mentioned Rosie being overlooked, but man, I felt like I heard nothing about Jisoo releasing an EP. Like, there was a lot of hype and promotion from the other three releases, but I don't know, maybe that just goes to show how not in sync with the online world when it comes to the K-pop community I am, because I felt like I didn't even see an announcement post for this. Like, I just randomly opened up Spotify on Valentine's Day and boom, new EP from Jisoo, and I'm like, I didn't even know it was releasing, you know. And then another reason that's kind of difficult to compare is it comes down to genre, because Rosie, Lisa, and Jennie have kind of all made this clear launch into the Western world style of music. They're trying to go more towards, you know, Western pop rather than, you know, K-pop. And Jisoo, her release kind of feels closer to the home of K-pop, you know. Even though there's 2 fully English songs on the record, they all kind of have more of that K-pop sound, that K-pop sort of formula, or like I guess formula is the word for it, you know. That's what it feels like in comparison to the other 3 releases, which felt more westernized, you know, felt they had more of a western sort of formation. But Jisoo, you know, feels right in the realm of K-pop. And another thing too that, you know, not necessarily using against the other 3 members, but like I've seen people use this as sort of a, like, kind of giving her like kudo points for it, is that she had no features, you know. The other 3 members, they went out and on their records got the likes of Bruno Mars, Caliuchis, Childish Gambino, Future, Rosalia, you know, so many features that all the other 3 members went out and got. Jisoo just went at it solo, you know. And out of the 4 releases, like I said, it really felt like she stuck with the genre that got her where she is today. And again, that isn't a knock on the other members or even Jisoo's work. It's just kind of an observation that you make when looking at this record. Earthquake is the title track for Amortage, and it is an energetic track that acts as a unique metaphor for the power of beauty. In the track, she talks about the strong attraction of beauty, being able to enamor people to the point of intense emotion. Essentially, it shakes them to the core like an earthquake. Your Love is the next song, and one of my favorites. It's such a nice sounding song. The production, easy on the ears. Jisoo's vocals are airy and soothing, and it kind of builds upon that sort of puppy love aesthetic of the first track, because Jisoo here is all about appreciating the love that you are given, you know. In the chorus, she states, "Your love feels like the rain, feels like a song I used to know, and your love feels like the way there's only green lights driving home. Your love feels like a Sunday when you got nowhere to go." Rain is refreshing after seasons of dry spells. Think about how happy you are to hear a song, or remember a song that you haven't heard in a while. How good does it feel driving home and getting nothing but green lights? The only one that trips me up is the Sunday metaphor. I don't really get that one, but you get the point. She loves being in love. Love is not something that should be taken for granted, and you shouldn't be ashamed to express the happiness it gives, you know. Jisoo follows in Rose's footsteps with the next song, Tears. Tears is all about heartbreak, but with a more positive outlook. She has this approach of being very much unbothered. She literally cheers to the fact that this person won't have an effect on her anymore, and that these will be the last tears she cries for them. Upbeat, empowering, you know, wants people to take that similar approach of like, let yourself feel the pain of heartbreak, but also allow yourself to move on with a positive mindset. Hugs and Kisses is the final track of this short 4-track EP. It continues that theme from Tears. Jisoo, she says, you know, don't bother even trying to send your best wishes because she's already moved on. And honestly, just like with Rose's, this is why I love analysis. This is why I've always loved podcasting, whether it's with friends or right here just on my own. I listened to this record plenty of times when it released, and I don't know, I didn't think a whole lot about it. Maybe I wasn't as focused, I don't know, but it was like I listened to it a lot. I was like, it was okay, you know. But then I sit down for a video like this, and I feel a greater sense of appreciation and concentration, you know, because just like Rose's album, I came out with a much better opinion on this short EP from Jisoo, and much like others, I'm left wanting more. And that mindset is exactly what I'm hoping can be said for the next record. Let's get it out the way. I might not have the best things to say about this album. When I was getting ready to write this script, I had told my friend about it, and I was like, I haven't, like, okay, so first off, one of the things that was brought up in my discussion with said friend was that I haven't really seen a consensus ranking from the fan base. Solo stans will obviously have their favorites at the top. Haters will have an agenda to push and have certain records at the bottom. And when it comes to just regular fans or people, you know, who are trying to be objective in the sense of not letting outside factors affect their rankings of the releases, it's kind of just been all over the place. Like, there is not a consensus ranking. Everyone has such different rankings. Everyone has different albums at their 1, at their 3, at the bottom, you know. It's like everyone has such a different list. But that doesn't mean I haven't seen discussions around the topic, though, about certain rankings. And specifically, the main discussion I've been seeing is that a good portion of people have been ranking Lisa's towards the bottom. And, fans of Lisa, they feel it's kind of like a massive hate train. Others kind of just feel like it was the record they enjoyed the least, and that's kind of where I fall into things. Like, based off my first listens, I didn't care much for the record. I didn't like the stylistic approach she took, and even felt like some portions came off a bit odd. But again, that's just how I felt after a couple of first listens. I think what did it for me specifically was a combination of things, and I still kind of feel some of these things after the release. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but one of the first things I think was just the singles kind of felt like Lisa was going in a different direction for me. Like, APT and Number One Girl did a sort of great job of setting expectations for Rosie's record while still leaving room for different styles and tones. Rockstar is similar to what the rest of the record would be like, but New Woman and Moonlight Floor are the ones that kind of led me to having different expectations. New Woman sees Lisa collaborate with Spanish singer Rosalia, and I really liked the song when it first released. To me, it kind of perfectly encapsulated Lisa. It was a mix of rapping and singing, soft and hard tones, unique production and vocal effects. I didn't know how Rosalia was going to work on the track, but I liked the change of pace with her verse, and lyrically, it sees Lisa taking the same approach as Rose, establishing what her solo career is going to be like. She wants to break free from the name she built in the K-pop world and establish a new her, hence why we get the alter ego title. Moonlight Floor was a complete 180 to the rest of the record for me, because you see Lisa slow things down all the way, especially, with a love song that samples and interpolates Sixpence None the Richer's Kiss Me. It can simply be described as a sweet song, just like Jisoo's Your Love. She is fully embracing love, outlining every single thing she loves about her lover. And as far as the second thing, getting back to my main point, I think it was the features that kind of threw me off a little bit. I was just kind of left confused, especially because the features kind of influence the way some of these songs end up being stylistically. And I know a lot of people might view that as unfair, given that Jennie's features were kind of out there as well. Like, I remember when Jennie dropped the teaser for the releases she was going to have on the record, and I was like, how did she get, like, not to question their impact and their reach, but I was just like, it's kind of confusing to see someone from the K-pop genre in their first release get such names on their record. Same thing with Lisa. So it just kind of left me kind of odd. We'll get to Jennie's eventually, but that was just kind of one of the things that kind of threw me off a bit, was the features and how they affected certain songs stylistically. But I don't know, that was just for my first listen. Those are some of the general thoughts I had for my first listens. It was basically singles kind of set me up to have different expectations, and the overall stylistic approach wasn't exactly my favorite. But as we saw from the previous two sections, I could end up leaving with an entirely different perspective. So let's start off with some context. Alter Ego is a 15-track record and the debut solo record of Lisa. The title came into fruition when Lisa began to experiment with different genres and styles of music, as we would come to see with this record. What was created were essentially 5 alter egos: Roxy, Kiki, Vixie, Suni, and Speedy. I don't even know if I pronounced some of those correctly, but anyways, they're supposed to be songs that kind of correlate to each ego, representing their personalities and styles. I've seen a couple of discussions online, but I haven't figured out too much what songs are supposed to go where. But getting into it, a song like Elastigirl sees Lisa flexing her flexibility and experimentation, being willing to step out of the norm. Thunder sees her full of confidence, wanting to make an impact with her debut and shake up the industry. Her and Tyla was actually one of my favorite collabs from the record. The two of them, I think, actually really meshed pretty well, and they actually worked well together, especially with their melodies. The main message of most of the songs is about Lisa being unapologetic about herself. She's not going to let the hate get to her. She's going to be herself. She's going to continue making the music she wants to make. People may have an idea of who she is or something they want her to be, but she wants to reinvent herself, and that's honestly something I have to kind of respect about all 4 Blackpink members' releases. They could have all done this the easy way, with how big their group is. Their names alone could have done all the heavy lifting with their music, but they all chose to kind of remain true to themselves while reinventing themselves. You know, they went out and they did a bunch of things different, you know, to really separate themselves from not necessarily the Blackpink name, but like when you compare the work, you know, it's like you really feel like they're trying to branch out there, you know, and that's something I have to respect. They all experimented, they all branched out to further develop their musical careers, you know. It may not be what we're used to, you know, but they have a vision of what they want to do. And similarly, Lisa, she had a vision and she couldn't care less about the hate, you know. She wants to experiment, she wants to try out different things, and that's something I honestly have to applaud her for. And finally, we get to our final latest release. I will, like I mentioned in the last section, I will never forget seeing the teaser for this record, because just like Lisa's, I sat and really took in that feature list when I was like looking at it go by. I was like, Dua Lipa, Doechii, Dominic Fike, Childish Gambino, FKJ, and Kali Uchis. How are some of these going to work were my thoughts, because just like with Alter Ego, I was like, how is this going to work? And you know, just like with Lisa's, some work for me, others not as much, and I was left confused by the features. But getting into it, Ruby is all about coming to understand yourself and being proud of it. Jennie and FKJ worked together to create this very instrumental intro for the record. It's very soft, almost childlike in its nature, you know, very much sounds like a nursery in a way. Like, I don't know how, like, what's the way to describe it, you know, but it's very soft and it kind of enters you into this world of Ruby. And Ruby is a persona that Jennie created when she was younger. It was someone for her to strive to be. And with that, like Jennie, shows us who she has become, because the song is loud and brash, but also displays the sort of pride she has and how far she has come. Things slow down a bit, but remain just as powerful with Start a War. This was an immediate favorite of mine off first listen. I love the sort of prolonged style of singing Jennie utilizes with some of her lines. The song, very beautifully about being willing to do anything for those you love, you know. The next song sees Jennie collaborating with Dua Lipa on the song Handlebars. Despite the confident start to the record, Jennie takes a page from Rosie and shows some vulnerability. Even with her pride, she can admit when she has some inherent flaws, such as how easily she falls in love. And as she describes it, she does it carelessly. When love presents itself, she ends up overcommitting, and it kind of leads to pain as she just falls flat to the ground, you know. Just like Rose with Bruno and Lisa with Rosalia, I think Jennie and Dua did a great job, and their vocals really complemented each other well, you know. Their different tones, I think, went well. However, her confidence is back on full display on With the IE. The production on this track is immaculate. Her verse at the end of the bridge was done so smoothly, and I just love the line about people choosing to hate on her on their days off, simply asking why they aren't using their time to be actually productive. Now, time to be fair and objective, just like we did with Lisa, I don't really like the track with Doechii as much as other tracks. I like both artists, but I don't know, I just felt there were some things that just didn't work for me. Like when I was examining it, I was like, maybe it's the production of this track that I'm not enjoying, but then there's also some parts where they have layered vocals and I'm not enjoying it as much. I thought both women had some good lines, but it definitely was a collab that I personally didn't like as much, and didn't, I don't know, maybe not necessarily didn't go the way I wanted it to, but I don't know, there was just some things that didn't hit with me, you know. Moving forward though, Mantra was the lead single for this record, and it's the one that really sets the tone, because Mantra is all about empowerment and living a carefree life. Very catchy with great instrumentation, such as, you know, the trumpets in the chorus, and you know, the trumpets are also sprinkled throughout the record, you know. And that opening part of the song, I don't know what it is, but it just lives in my head. Those vocal effects do something for me, you know. Very good. And again, looking at it with the context of the Ruby thing, it very much shows you that this is the kind of person Jennie wanted to be when she was growing up, you know, like this is the type of person she wanted to be. This is the type of person she wanted to be for other people as well. So it does a really good job of getting that theme across. Moving forward, Love Hangover sees Jennie stuck in the same boat as Handlebars and also Rosé's album. She just keeps falling hard in love and going back to toxic situations. I will say I wasn't a fan at first, but after a couple more listens, I started to enjoy it a bit more. This track is very different stylistically, with a more laid-back R&B inspired feel. There's some soulful bass in this one, and Dominic Fike's sort of rap R&B mixture was a nice switch up. Not a big fan of the ending though, but I did enjoy the song a lot more after a couple listens. Zen instrumentally was very reminiscent of the sort of EDM, mainly pertaining to that Monster Cat scene sort of, production to me. Like, I don't like, again, it's, I guess, it has heavy EDM-esque production and build up, but I don't know, the production and the vocals reminded me a lot. Like, the one song that kind of stands out to me is that song Contagious by Grant and Rune, I forget how it's pronounced. Like, I don't know, Jennie's vocals kind of remind me a lot of that. The production reminds me a lot of that. Very like dramatic in its build up. And the song itself is all about becoming sure in oneself. Jennie has come to understand herself and who she is, and thus is now firm in her ways. No longer is she going to be fazed by negativity. She just wants to be fully sure of herself, And I will say, a very interesting decision was made. I really kind of enjoyed it that they included these various naturistic sounds, such as like the birds, to kind of really sell the whole Zen name to it. Damn Right is another track that I didn't enjoy as much, and I think for me it's the pace of the song. It's very mellow and chill, and I do like all the artists involved, but I don't know, I just can't say it was a favorite of mine. I think it comes down to its pace and placement, because it just feels a bit off at times. I don't know what it is. Filter was a track where I found myself enjoying one part but not the other, because Jennie's rapping was a highlight for me, but I just couldn't really stand the high-pitched vocals in the background. It does have a great message of learning to love oneself, and can even be seen as a shot at the K-pop world for forcing her to have to look a certain way to appease the masses. But overall, Ruby is one of my favorite releases of the year so far. It has a lot of variety to it and made an instant impact with me. And just like the rest of the Blackpink members, Jennie does a great job of showcasing her personality on this record. So, what was the point of all this? No reason. Just thought it would be fun. Blackpink is one of the biggest groups from the K-pop genre, with each of their members having something unique to offer. And to me, that's kind of the sad part of this all. Blackpink got so big that by the quote unquote end of it, because they're not officially disbanded, but like everyone's going off to their solo things. Who knows when you're going to see a group project from them? So the quote unquote end of it, it just kind of seemed like people were waiting for these solo releases, like they got so big to the point where like people were kind of looking forward to see what the members would do on their own rather than together. But on the more positive things, the one thing that comes out of these solo releases is a sense of reassurance. Like I said earlier, Blackpink has always had a lot of turmoil around them, whether it's a lot of the noise in the media, all the narratives. They've had to deal with a lot of drama. So it's like after all those years of turmoil, after all those years of fans feeling like YG Entertainment was holding them back, these releases kind of give you a sigh of relief that they're going to be fine. It may be a while that you see them together again, like on a group release under the Blackpink name. Maybe it never happens again, but you're left with relief after all these records that, like I said, they're going to be fine. They have each carved a lane for themselves, and they found themselves at this new stage of their careers. They are confident. They understand what they want to do. That's like the biggest thing to come out of these 4 releases, that they know what direction they want to go in. They feel confident and assured in themselves that they can experiment and do things new and still see success for all of it. As far as the rankings go, it's much harder than when I initially did it, because there's so much to take into account that like I didn't originally, because you look at a lot of different things. Jenny's was the one that had the most immediate impact with me, but like I said through this video, Rosie and Jisoo grew on me so much after this video analyzing their records. You know, how do I rank Jisoo's in comparison to the other three, given it's an EP while the others are full-length releases? Rosie's story heavily influences the emotional themes present throughout her record. Lisa and Jenny took diverse routes musically, as well as had definitive concepts for their releases. So there's a lot that goes into making it, you know, making this decision, and it makes it so difficult. But I think at the end of the day, I would probably go Rosie, Ruby, Amortage, and Alter Ego as my list. It kind of feels wrong to have Jisoo's that low, but again, I think it's just at that disadvantage of being just an EP. Initially, I had Ruby at the top, but like I said, after looking into Rose's more, you know, looking at it lyrically and thematically, it just got a much deserved boost for me. But at the end of the day, I just love music. I'm glad to see the Blackpink members thriving in their solo ventures.